Rube, this is a weird week because we're getting ready to watch a game against the Cowboys that actually doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah, and it's weird because the Eagles have had these games in the past where they can improve their seeding. I mean, they technically can become a 6 seed, but it doesn't mean anything because the opponents they would have at 6 are the same as the opponents they could have at 7, and since they play the day before those other games, they won't know. So there's really no motivation to win the game unless you just want to say you won 10 games. It's interesting to me because Nick Sirianni, and we'll get to this, but one of his main fundamental tenets is competition. So it's kind of unlike him to say we're just going to put in a bunch of backups to play the game. But in this case, that's what makes the most sense.
Yeah, this is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben, Frank, on Dave Zangaro. We're going to get into some of that, whether or not we think the starters or most of the starters, some of the starters will play in this game. The Eagles had a bunch of guys go on the COVID list. So we'll talk about that, what that means moving forward. We'll look at their potential playoff opponents. Ruby just mentioned them a little bit. And then if the starters don't play, which we think there's a good chance they might not, or at least some of them, we'll go through some of the players we really want to watch on Saturday. And some of the young players we don't get to see all the time. But Rube, let's start with the starters and whether or not we think they'll play. I mean, the pure numbers of it suggest that some of them are going to have – you can't just sit all 22. But, with some guys that they rest regularly during the week and their starting quarterback who's been dealing with a lingering ankle injury, it makes so much sense for them to rest some of these guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think guys and it's interesting because Kelsey has that streak. So, maybe he plays the first series, although you have to have him active to do that. That might be tricky. Guys like Fletcher, Lane, some of the older guys, I wouldn't expect to see them at all. There's not enough game day active players to only play backup. So, some guys are going to have to play. When it comes to Jalen, and I was just thinking that we just got off the phone or off the Zoom call with Jalen. I was just thinking about this. He would be in greater jeopardy of getting COVID if he plays. I mean, it seems like these guys get it. I mean, they all test on Monday. It seems like if he just doesn't go anywhere near the stadium, it might be a little safer. I don't know. I don't know if the Eagles got it on a bus trip coming back from Washington. Who knows? But I just feel like paramount for them to have him for the playoffs. So it's not just injury related. It's COVID related. You got to take all these things into consideration. So, but also he's a guy who's still rehabbing from an ankle and he looks like he's almost healthy, but you just can't risk having him out there at all. So he's one guy. I can't imagine he would even be dressed. So guys like that, obviously, you need running backs. You need guys to play. I think we'll probably see guys like Jay Jaw, Greg Ward. There's only so many, depending on how many guys come back from COVID by Saturday, there's only so many practice squad guys you can bring up, but guys like maybe Jason Huntley, might play. We'll see, but there's going to be a lot of, I would suggest anyone watching the game Saturday night, have a flip card handy because you're going to need it.
Something tells me the flip card might not even be updated enough for it to really work because we'll get into the COVID guys, but you're allowed unlimited COVID elevations for a week. So me thinking ahead a little bit there, I think we might see a few of those this weekend, and it would make some decisions a little easier, honestly. It is a weird thing because there's two schools of thought to this. Is one, you rest the guys, you stay healthy. And based on what we've seen from Nick since he's been the head coach, you can kind of follow the line of logic he's used in training camp, the hour-long practices, limiting practices during the week, making Wednesdays walkthroughs. All these things have been about keeping the team healthy and keeping them ready and fresh. So now that you're presented with a game that might not mean anything, that probably won't mean anything, what's he going to do? If you follow what he's done, the answer is pretty simple. I will point out that, we asked him about this, and he's been in a lot of winning in situations, like playing games where they needed to play. Only once in his coaching career, and it was back in 2010, was there a game like this. It was the Chiefs. They had the NFC West locked up going into week 17. Interestingly, they played their starters in that game, still lost, and then got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. So try to find a lesson there if you want, but it was 11 years ago, and that strategy didn't really pay off. So
that was Todd Haley, right?
That was Todd Haley as the head coach. Nick was quarterback's coach, I believe, or he was some sort of assistant. So take from that what you will, but to me, it makes sense to rest at least some of these guys. Jordan Howard's another big one. I'd expect them to rest. He didn't quite look 100%.
No, he did not
in that last game. So it lines up to be like, why would you start these guys and let them play? But maybe is there an argument to be made for playing some starters for a series or two, keeping them fresh, and after that, but kind of keeping some rhythm going?
We're in week 18. I've always gone along with Andy Reid's whole thing. The rest is more important than any keeping guys fresh that you can get. I'll never forget in 2004, the Eagles locked up the number 1 seed with 2 games to go. And it was kind of like a controversy around the team because Andy was like, I'm not playing anybody. I'm playing as many backups as I can the last 2 games. And they had a bye week. So the starters didn't play for a month. And that was the whole thing. Like, how are they going to, how sharp are they going to be in the postseason? Well, obviously they were very, very sharp. They went to the Super Bowl. So I think you weigh everything, and I really believe that giving these guys as much rest as possible. They had a late bye, so they went straight from training camp through the first 3.5 months of the season. I just think there's more value. You fight all year for a first round bye, and they have a way to get it without being a number 1 seed. So I think you take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, and I guess you can look at it like, what's the downside? They're going to come out and have a slow start. Well, they do that anyway. So what are you really gaining? Let's talk about the COVID guys. They put 12 players on the COVID list. There are plenty of theories about this, but here's what we know. Here's what the rules are from the NFL. It's or vaccinated players only get tested when they're symptomatic or if they volunteer. So if they're sniffling and coughing and a doctor spots them, hey, you go get tested. And the random tests, I believe, are for position groups. But it would make some sense for these guys to come off of a game where they know they clinched the playoffs the next day to say, well, let me get tested now. Because the downside is, yes, they test positive, but if they miss a game, it's a game that they might not have played anyway. And then theoretically, they're fine for the playoff run.
Yeah, and I would surmise that barring really, really unforeseen circumstances, all the guys that are on the COVID list now are going to be available for a playoff game in a week and a half. Teron Jackson, was it, who was cleared in 2 days?
Yeah.
I would guess that most of these guys, it seems like the average is 4 or 5 days. There's some guys who've been on it, missed. Somebody just missed 2. Well, Dillard missed 2 games, I believe.
That was a kind of a timing.
Yeah.
issue.
And the 1 week. Yeah. Right. I think the fact that it's Monday, it was Monday, that they were positive. I believe, right? Today's Tuesday. Yeah, it was Monday.
Yeah.
I think if they wanted some of these guys to play Saturday, I'm sure that some of them will be cleared. Jack Stoll. If you want Jack Stoll to go out and play tight end, because you don't want to play Goddard, I would think you'd have most of these guys cleared. Kelsey's an interesting one for me because, I'm the stats guy, but he hasn't missed a game since the middle of 2014. And I know that, he's not big on honors and records and stats and stuff, but that's one that I know means a lot to him, the consecutive starts. It's the 4th longest in Eagles history. He just passed Reggie White on Sunday for 4th longest streak of starts. So I know that means something to him. I'm sure he'd he'd rather go out and play a series if he could and keep that going. But, for the most part, I mean, if this happened a week from now, I mean, they'd be in really, really serious trouble. That's when you start thinking, well, they moved the first Washington game. Maybe we should move our playoff game, which isn't going to happen. But, it's like you can only control, you can control everything within your power. And I mean, this thing is running rampant around here. So there's only so much you can control. But, hopefully that the timing works out. They get everybody back.
It feels like they were in control of this within reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the first time they've had more than a couple at a time. I think they might have had 4 at one point.
No, I mean, I feels like they were in control of this outbreak within reason, like getting these for 12 guys to go on. And I'm not trying to go tinfoil hat here, but to have 12 guys go on the list the day after you clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's curious.
Yeah. And I can tell you, look, from like, I have a relatively unique perspective on this, and I'm obviously not playing in games, but one of the first things I thought about when I had COVID was, great, I'm going to be ready for the playoffs. Like, obviously I hope I didn't get sick, but that was like one of the first things I thought was like, I'm going to be okay now. I'm going to be good to go on the road for the playoffs. I'll be able to cover it. And if I'm thinking that way, imagine the way players are thinking. You know what I mean? I think that's natural. Like, obviously, you hope everyone's healthy and safe. I think a lot of that goes without saying. But if I'm thinking that way, you better believe Fletcher Cox is thinking that way.
So you're not hinting that they all got it on purpose?
No, I don't think they got it on purpose.
Okay.
I think that right now they might almost be feeling a sense of relief.
Yeah. Well, it's for people that don't know you as well as I know you, I think they're getting a glimpse into your personality. The first thing you thought of was, I'll be fine for the playoff game. The second thing you thought of was, gee, I hope I'm okay. That tells you all you need to know about Dave and his priorities. But yeah, it's interesting. And we don't know. I mean, we know what, almost everybody on the roster has been vaccinated, and it's still harder for the unvaccinated guys to get back, although they can. But Jalen's my biggest concern because, I mean, he's, he hasn't had it. He hasn't been on the list. He hasn't had it as far as we know, at least, has never been on the list. Got to have him going into the playoffs. I mean, so I would just tell him to go hide in his basement until the first practice of playoff week.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership, along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA. Get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For the details, visit AAA.com/Eagles.
All right, Rube. So we mentioned that the Eagles have limited possibilities of who they'll play in the first round of the playoffs, but the most likely case here is that Tampa Bay is the team. I mean, even whether they're 6th seed or 7th seed, the odds are it's going to be Tampa Bay, but they also have a shot at the Rams. The Rams are the next most likely, followed by the Cardinals and the Cowboys. So I figured we would go through those 4 teams, the options for the Eagles, and try to figure out what we think would be beneficial to them, which matchups are easier and harder. So let's start off with.
And let me just say this: if they're the number 6 seed, they have to play Tampa. Right, that's their only possible opponent if they're the 6th seed. If they're the 7, it could be Tampa, Arizona, Rams, or Cowboys, depending on other games. I got to put in a plug for our guy Denise. Is that how it's pronounced? Dennis Selman. Check him out on Twitter. It's at DENIZSELMAN33. And he puts up these tiebreaker charts and playoff charts that are unbelievable. I mean, they're so comprehensive, easy to follow, gives you all the possibilities. And, we use them as a real guide for what could happen. So check them out. Anyway, yes. continue, please, Dave.
Yes, sure. So let's go through these teams. If you're the Eagles and you got to pick which team you get to face, who would you pick?
Yeah, I think I'd probably pick Arizona right now, just because they've kind of. I mean, look, they're all good teams, but Arizona's kind of, and they obviously had a great win last weekend, but they haven't been the same. They haven't been the same team the last couple months, and I think they might be a little susceptible to the Eagles' running game. I would stay away. I would want to stay away from Tampa. The Rams are hot. Dallas, I don't know if you want to go there. I don't think the Eagles have beaten Dallas in the postseason since the 1980 NFC Championship game. I believe they've lost like 4 straight. So I think Arizona would be my top pick if I could choose. How about you?
Yeah, no, definitely for me. I mean, that was a team that they were 7-0. Then they were 9-2 going in the bye week. They're 2-3 since. They're still without DeAndre Hopkins. If they don't have him, that offense is all of a sudden pretty limited. J.J. Watt's out. I guess there's a chance both of those guys could return. But, yeah, and look, the storyline of Zach Ertz playing the Eagles would be a lot of fun too. But just looking at the team, I think that's the easiest matchup. And that's not to say they don't have good players and it's not a good team. I mean, Kyler, I guess it scares you. He could run all over you, but not a lot of experience there. If you're looking at the 4 quarterbacks in that group, I'd put him at the bottom of that list.
Yeah, Stafford, Dak, and Brady. Yeah. Who would you want to avoid the most?
Well, let's go through. Do you want to go that way, or do you want to go through
all 4? Yeah, sure. Let's go in order. Okay.
Yeah. So, after the Cardinals, which team would you then want to see the most?
it'd be either the Rams or Cowboys. I would say the Cowboys next, just because they've been so up and down. They've had some really bad losses. They've had some incredible wins, but I'd probably go down. I think the Rams are pretty hot. I think they found something. Although I would have more faith in Dak than Matt Stafford in a big game. We've certainly seen the Eagles win big games with postseason implications against LA on the road in a different stadium. But I think that's close, but I would go Dallas next. Dallas is going to, at some point, they kind of revert into the Cowboys and they fall apart. So it would come down to those two. I'd probably go Dallas. You know what? I'd go Rams second, just because Stafford. I have more faith in Dak than Stafford. I go Rams next.
Stafford's weird. Stafford. I mean, I'm still a very big believer in Matt Stafford. I think he's a very, very good quarterback. Recent weeks, the numbers have tapered off a little bit. He's turned the football over a little bit more than we're used to seeing. I'd have the Rams next, but it's closer for me than I think it is for you.
No, it's very close. I mean, I said Cowboys first, but I think it's very close. But
yeah, for me, it's honestly it's close for me between the Rams and Tampa, and I understand. Yeah. And we'll get to Tampa in a little bit, and I get why they're the scariest when you look at them. But for the Rams, they're a very good team. They have star power all over. I think after the Cardinals, these 3 teams are. Look, I actually, here's what I'll say. I think the Rams and the Cowboys are the 2 deepest teams of these 4, and the Bucs have Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I would want to avoid Brady at all costs in a playoff game. I mean, I know what happened 4 years ago. That was a once in a lifetime thing. I wouldn't count on it keep happening. But
so you'd have
look, and they're very tough to run on. They've got a great run defense. They got a tremendous defense. Overall, it's a tough place to play. I mean, we already saw what Brady did against his team once. I mean, look, this defense has played better.
Dak did against them too, though.
He did, but he's also, I mean, all three of these teams are formidable, but I would just want to stay away from Brady. I would just want to stay away from him. I think I mean, look, Tampa almost lost to the Jets, so you can make that case about anybody, but I just would want to stay out of Tampa.
Yeah, I get it. Probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you would have Cardinals, Rams, Cowboys, Bucks.
Right.
I'd have Cardinals, Rams, Bucks, Cowboys. I'm a believer in the Cowboys. I really am. And maybe you're right. Maybe they turn into a pumpkin when they get into the playoffs. But that's a deep team. It really is. And their defense is good. For so many years, it was that the offense had to be so incredible and high flying. But that defense with Micah Parsons and Diggs is just – it's a really good defense now. And Gregory's made a difference. And Lawrence is back. I wouldn't want to see that Cowboys team. I think they're the deepest. And maybe they collapse. And I don't really believe in their head coach either. So you have to factor that in. But I wouldn't want to see that Cowboys team.
That's fair.
And then with the Bucks, like, do you put any stock into, like, the Antonio Brown stuff? They're missing Godwin now. Yeah. I know Levante David might be back, but they're a different defense without him. I think there's some questions about Tampa.
Yeah, there's no question they haven't been as dominating of late, but they have the greatest player in history, and I would just want to avoid him. I think they have a hell of a coach too. I think he's terrific, and that defense. We talk about Brady, but that defense is really good. Look, I think this Eagles defense has improved, but that matchup is not one I want to see again. But
yeah.
I understand. I mean, look, you see the weapons that Dallas has on both sides of the ball. They did lose Gallup. I don't think he's coming back. I'm not sure.
ACL, yeah.
I think okay, so he's done.
Shame for him too, because he's about to be a free agent.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you see what just the train wreck. What's the phrase Gannon uses? He train wrecked the game.
Yeah.
Micah Parsons has the ability to do that against
from
anybody.
2 positions.
Yeah, I mean, you could put him at cornerback and he'll probably get 3 picks. They're just so loaded. I mean, they have so much star power. It's an imposing task, but I'll still put Brady at the top of that list. As many issues as Tampa has, and I don't think Tampa's going to win the Super Bowl again. But I do think the Eagles would behoove themselves to avoid going to Tampa. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
I don't know. I haven't really given that much thought, honestly.
All right. Well, we can talk about that next month.
Yeah, I'm trying. I just go one day at a time, Rube.
Gotcha.
Be where your feet are.
It's another JG-ism. Nissan just made your choice. Where would you rather go? You probably want to. Would you want to go to Arizona?
Personally?
Yeah.
No, Tampa. Like just from a travel standpoint, you mean?
Little Frenchies, nice airport.
Oh, it's
quick flight.
An easier trip, shorter flight.
Hertz counters in the terminal, no shuttles.
In the terminal, yeah, I know that well. Yeah, just from if we're talking purely selfish travel, yeah, that's the easiest one, and they're all warm weather, so that doesn't really factor too much. It's Tampa be the easier one.
I know you're bummed about Green Bay locking up number 1.
I became a big Green Bay fan the second half of the year.
Nissan just made your choice for a new car. It was funny, like during the Vikings game, my whole timeline was like all of a sudden all these Eagles fans or Packers fans, these people that just grew up hating Favre and hating Rodgers. It's kind of funny. That's a funny little side effect of the way the schedule turned out. Nissan just made your choice for a new car, an easier one than ever, with their most exciting and fuel-efficient lineup. The choice is yours. Now get great offers across Nissan's full line. Shop your local Nissan store today at nissanusa.com.
Rube, I know you have some stats for us from your piece. Before that, real quick, I wanted to throw this in. Jalen Hurts sent that letter. If you guys haven't seen it, it's all over social media. We have a story up on the site right now. But he sent a letter to the Washington football team and to NFL officials basically trying to find out what the heck their plan is to make sure fans don't ever fall out of the stands again. And I was just thinking about that a little bit ago, Reuben. He's a 23-year-old kid, and we forget it because he's so polished and everything he does is always the right step. How impressive is this?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, to pen a letter like that, and I'm sure he got the Eagles to kind of approve him doing it. But it shows a lot. And he had, I mean, it could have been really bad. He could have been really injured, and so could have a lot of other people. And it just shows so much social responsibility on his part, his concern for the fans and the media. Nobody cares about the media, but that showed me a lot. And I mean, we talk about his intangibles all the time and everything, but I mean, that's who he is. I mean, he genuinely cares and wants to do the right thing. And I don't think he was grandstanding or showboating. I think he really wants that stadium to be safer for the fans in there, and good for him.
Yeah, and in the moment, some of the fans have spoken publicly since the incident. One of them was on WIP on Monday, and he was saying, like, in the moment, Jalen Hurts is helping them up. Like, are you okay? Are you okay? That was his first thought, and it was cool to see. I mean, obviously, you never want a situation like that to happen, but to see the poise that Hurts handled it with, and not just in the moment, but now since then, it's just another example of why people gravitate toward him.
So true. I mean, he's a special guy. It really is. Whatever you think of him as a quarterback, he's a special person. I mean, he's going to be successful in anything he ever tries. I mean, I could, he'll be in Congress one day probably.
All right, so you have some stats for us that you wanted to run down.
I
know it's unlike you.
I got
definitely out of your character here.
So Dave and I each have like our loss leaders, like the pieces we do every week that we really like that no one really reads. Like for you, it's like let's be honest. For you, it's snap.
For me, it's snap counts. Yeah,
and grades. Like I don't know. Do people probably read? Grades?
No, the grades do well. Yeah,
grades do well, but snap counts. For me, it's my weekly stats, and it's my favorite thing to do. I love doing it, and so it's up there every week around, I guess, Wednesday, middle of the week, a day earlier this week because of the short week. But I'll go through a few of them from this week just because they're fun. One is that the Eagles now have 24 rushing touchdowns this year, which is only one off the franchise record set in 1945. Eagles had 25 rushing touchdowns in 10 games. It was a 10-game season back then. In 1945. Boy, I remember it would just fly by. I mean, it was just like, you leave training camp and season was over. So that's one good one. Oh, I like this one. Nick Sirianni on Sunday became only the second coach in NFL history to lead a team to a winning record and a playoff berth in his first season after starting out 2-5. And the other was Frank Reich 3 years ago with the Colts with his offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni. So I thought that was pretty cool. I like this one. Jalen Hurts is only the third quarterback in history to complete 52% of his passes as a rookie or worse and improve to over 60% in his second season. That's based on 100 attempts in each season. The other two are Steve DeBerg with the Niners back in the late 70s, and your good friend and his Vince Young with the Titans in 2006 and 2007.
Anytime you can squeeze Vince Young into a stat.
Yeah. That's a dream stat right there. I'll give you two more. This is really cool. The Eagles have put together a streak of 9 straight games where they've rushed for over 110 yards and they've allowed fewer than 110 yards. Now, there's only been one longer streak in history of a team rushing for 110 yards and allowing fewer than 110 yards. That was the 1941 Bears.
That's a good one. I like that one. Be my favorite one.
Yeah, so that they can go after that on Saturday night. All right, here's the last one I'll give you, and the whole kit and caboodle is up on the site. Miles is averaging 5.5 yards per carry, and Jalen Hurts is averaging 5.6 yards per carry. They both have over 135 attempts. No teammates in history have ever averaged 5.5 yards per carry with 135 or more rushing attempts in the same season. So assuming neither one's going to play, we know Miles isn't going to play. We kind of pretty sure Jalen's not going to play. And if he does, I don't think he's going to be taken off running very, very much. But they're both done for the year, most likely. They will finish as the first teammates in history to average 5.5 yards per carry with at least 135 rushing attempts in the same season.
How mad would you be if the Eagles are up big and for some reason they put out Jalen Hurts to get his victory formation snaps at home and get the applause from the crowd?
Well, he's up high enough. He's at like 5.64 that he would probably need about 12 kneel downs to get under, because it's got to be 5.46. So it's got, because you round up. So I think I'll be okay if that happens. I appreciate your concern, though.
All right. The last thing we wanted to do is we'll assume that some of these starters are not going to play. And if they play, they're not going to play a ton. Some young players that we want to see in game action on Saturday. We kind of do this for the preseason games, and this is similar in some ways. Right. We'll ping pong this back and forth a little bit like we like to do. And by the way, I had a buddy who does like the band you mentioned, Pigeons playing ping pong. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Said they're good. All right. So I'll let you go first.
You sound surprised.
I was. Give me a name. Who do you want to see on Saturday?
How about that Jason Huntley? He's a guy who's been here for a couple years. Got off to a great start at training. Had a really good training camp. There was a stretch there where he had a big play either in the run game or the pass game every day. So Miles isn't going to play. I'm pretty sure Jordan Howard's not going to play. Boston might not even play. So Jason Huntley's on the practice squad, but he's certainly one guy I would like to see a lot of.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm going to say Zach McPherson because I'm looking at the guys who they might rest, and Darius Slay makes a lot of sense. You obviously need him in the playoffs, so that would mean Zach McPherson likely gets a start. And he's looked pretty good in some spots where they've needed him to play, but we haven't seen him play for an entire game yet as a rookie. So I'd like to see him because next year, Steven Nelson's going to be a free agent. Maybe they bring him back. Maybe they don't. Could Zach McPherson take that spot next year? I don't know, but I want to see more of him.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give you Jacoby Stevens. He played his first game on Sunday. He'd been inactive for 15 games. Made a play on special teams on your boy DeAndre Carter, and he's really the only draft pick who hasn't had a role somewhere. So. He's had the whole year to kind of, and I'm talking about seeing him play a little bit of defense, not special teams. Let's take a look at him, see him, let him run around. And I wouldn't expect him to play at an all-pro level, but I want to see a little bit of Jacoby Stevens.
Yeah. I'll give you one that we've seen play, but he'll probably have to play a lot more in this game. Milton Williams. I can't imagine Fletcher Cox is going to play. I'd like to see Milton get some snaps inside and outside in this game. Really let him bounce around a little bit. Let's see what he can do if given the level of snaps that Fletcher normally gets.
Well, I would think it would be Milton and Hassan Ridgeway. I'm not going to say Hassan Ridgeway for one of mine. I'll give you one more. You want to do one more round here?
Sure.
I want to see John Hightower, and we haven't seen him this year. A guy
on the practice squad.
Been on the practice squad. He's made a couple plays early last year, and then lost his reps to Travis Fulgham, whatever happened to him. Hightower's a guy who he was just so inconsistent last year. I think he really had trouble getting off the line of scrimmage. He needed a year on the practice squad. So let's take a look and see if he can, get open and catch a couple balls.
That's a good one. I'll finish it up here with Gardner Minshew. I just want some Minshew mania. It's a game where it's going to be a little difficult for fans to get geared up, but imagine if it was Joe Flacco as the quarterback and not at least Gardner Minshew brings some juice. We'll get to see him go crazy and be excited and celebrate after big plays. It'll be fun to watch Gardner play again.
I wonder how much he would play or if Reed Stinnett would play. And by the way, we talk about what changed before the Detroit game. That's when they got Reed Stinnett. was right before the Stinnett.
Sinnett.
Yeah, I'm still thinking of Rennie Stennett from the Pirates. I got so many tweets from Pirates fans who appreciate me running down their entire lineup, by the way. So what might be a ridiculous like aside to you means something to someone out there. But they claimed him or signed him off somebody's practice squad, Miami's, right before the Detroit game. They're 7-2 with Reed Stinnett on the roster. So there you go. He might play a lot. I'm not sure you want to have Minshew play the whole game. We'll see. Yeah,
that's probably a fair point because you want a backup quarterback.
Right. Who's not Reed Stinnett.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else before we wrap it up?
I got nothing else.
All right. Well, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click the like button and subscribe there as well. We'll be back later in the week to look ahead to the Dallas game and to the playoffs. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.